Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. Look at Mark Stoops with the big thumbs up. I'll be real. I was planning to talk a lot of different things. If you had asked me on Friday what we were going to talk about, probably Alabama, LSU, Oregon, Iowa, maybe Auburn, Vandy, if Auburn got the win, whatever. I'm just trying to think, maybe LSU if they pulled off the upset. The one game that I did not have on the agenda for Sunday morning was Kentucky, Florida, okay? So Kentucky, we've talked about Kentucky. We've talked a lot about them. I think I've been as critical of Mark Stoops as any national media member. I think I was ahead of the Mark Stoops narrative, for up until probably the middle of October. Every other national media member is trying to tell you, he's got the best job in college football. Everybody loves him. It's like, no. Things are going sideways. Things are not good. And we spent a big chunk of September and October talking about, would he be back? Can you get out of the buyout? Who could potentially replace him? All of that. At the same time, I have to give credit where it's due. Kentucky with the absolute belt to, excuse my language if you're listening in the car with kids, BTA, belt to ass. Okay, I don't care how bad Florida is. Billy Gonzalez clearly is so far in over his head, like whatever. 38-7 final score. Kentucky has now won a second straight SEC game. Kentucky has now, by the way, gotten to 4-5. And I do wonder if Mark Stoops is slowly starting to coach himself off the hot seat and get himself at minimum another year at Kentucky. So first of all, let me say this. Let me just take a half a second, give credit to Kentucky, okay? Because I thought Kentucky had the chance to win. And I thought it would be high scoring. By the way, Torres got the over at 45.5 in this game. That was a tough pill to swallow. Kentucky wins 38-7. And Kentucky, by the way, puts up 24 points in the first half. I'm thinking we're cruising to the over. All Florida's got to do is put up like 14 points on a defense that hasn't been very good this year. Yeah, that does not happen. Part of it is a credit to Kentucky. Listen, great story, great 2-3 week stretch here. They should have beaten Texas, if we're being perfectly honest, a few weeks ago. Part of the story is here, though, Florida. Like, listen, I'm not trying to, steal the spotlight from Kentucky. I don't know that I've ever seen a meltdown with Florida. Now, Florida, under Billy Napier, they were really poorly coached, but at least, they were in every game. Now, they couldn't get first downs. They couldn't complete forward passes, but at least, they embarrassed themselves in a different kind of way. Like losing to South Florida because you don't know how to use timeouts, that's embarrassing. Getting boat raced by Kentucky is next level stuff. We talked about Garrett Nussmeier getting benched earlier in the show. DJ Lagway getting benched in this game. It is chaos. It shows just how crazy this season has been, okay? Florida stinks. They're clearly going to have a new head coach. That's a place that, one, you better hope you get Lane Kiffin, because if you don't get Lane Kiffin, I don't even know where you go from there. But two, you got to burn it down and just build it back up from the start. It is unbelievable how far that program has fallen. And I think, by the way, we'll get back to Kentucky in a second, but even when Florida was bad under Will Muschamp and Jim McElwain, they still had 10-win seasons mixed in. McElwain made a couple SEC championship games. They never lost to Kentucky, at least not until late in the Dan Mullen era, but this is about Kentucky. And so I want to give them credit. And I want to talk Mark Stoops, because it was literally 2 weeks ago. We were talking about the Matt Jones report where he basically said at the time, Kentucky was 2-5. He went on with Andy Staples and Ari Wasserman on 3 and basically said, this is the first time that I really think that even if we have to pay the full $38 million buyout, we're going to do it, because we are not waiting for another year with the state of this program, okay? That was coming off the Tennessee loss to drop them to 2-5. Well, what has happened since? You go to Auburn, you get the win, and then you beat Florida. And I think what's kind of interesting about it is a couple things. One, the team clearly has not quit on the coach. And two, I think that what's interesting about it is you did it in different ways. In Auburn, it was this defensive slugfest, old school Kentucky kind of win, 10-3. And then you got to open it up against Florida, and you put up 38 points in the win. And so when I look at Mark Stoops, let's contextualize this a little bit, okay? And by the way, for full Kentucky coverage, follow Torres on UK. Torres on UK for all your late breaking Kentucky news. And by the way, when I say Torres on UK, we're not covering English Premier League soccer. Okay. Anyway, I'm off the rails today. I got like 2 hours of sleep. By the way, quick side story. I actually had a dream about Mark Stoops last night. Weird. We're dog sitting. The dog was kicking me in my sleep, but I had a dream that I was in the room. Mark Stoops was negotiating a buyout, and I was in the background, and he didn't know I was there. Well, guess what? At least through today, he ain't negotiating a buyout. And so bigger picture, that is 100% true story, by the way. What was I saying? Dog sitting, Mark Stoops buyout. Okay. So at least for one more day, Mark Stoops ain't going anywhere. I think there's now a real conversation. Okay. So first off, let's set up the context. They're 4-5 right now. Final 3, Tennessee Tech at home. Obviously got to win that game. Then at Vandy, at Louisville to close the regular season. Okay. To go back to what Matt Jones said weeks ago, he said 6-6 keeps Mark Stoops keeps the job. But that was under the assumption, hey, you got to win 3 out of 4 against Auburn, Kentucky, Vandy, and Louisville. Well, you have won 2 out of the 4 so far. So you're doing good. You're where you need to be. And I think the context of everything else matters as well. One, there's the $38 million buyout. And we know Mark Stoops isn't going to go down without swinging. Now, listen, if they get blown out in the last 2 games, I still think there's the possibility that he at least considers a renegotiation. Don't kill your legacy. If you finish 5-7, whatever, and you're clearly not the guy, maybe you reconsider. But 1, there's the buyout. But 2, there's a couple other variables that I think we have to think about. 1, you found the quarterback. And it was funny because, the Zach Calzada stuff blew up over the last couple days. And I tweeted something about Zach Calzada, but I said the offense has taken off without him. And people were like, oh, we like Cutter Boley, but the offense has not taken off without him. It's like, yeah, the offense hasn't taken off because you were playing Texas and Auburn, 2 great defenses. Cutter Boley is clearly the guy. He is clearly the long-term answer at Kentucky. And I think if you retain Mark Stoops, it's almost certain that you keep him, right? Now, I know what people say. You never know in this era. But Cutter Boley is from the state of Kentucky. He's a redshirt freshman, and he is playing as well as any quarterback since Will Levis back in the year when Liam Cohen was calling plays. And so for me, I just sit there and say, you got the quarterback. And I know it's not perfect. And I know there's things that you aren't happy about. And I know the standard shouldn't be 5-7 or even 6-6. But if you have the quarterback in place, what is the best case scenario? You hire a different coach in hopes that he goes into the portal and finds somebody as good or retains Cutter Boley. You can retain Cutter Boley. I think the other thing we have to consider, where are you in the pecking order of this job situation, right? You look at the jobs available. If Kentucky decided to move on from Mark Stoops, they're clearly at minimum the 4th best job and maybe even the 5th best job behind Arkansas. Because when you look at Arkansas, listen, they've had a several-month head start on you. They are not committed to the big picture buyout that you are with Mark Stoops. And I think even Arkansas can offer some things from a football perspective that Kentucky can't right now. Again, you're going to spend so much money buying out Mark Stoops. I don't know what you'll be able to give the next head coach. And so when you have the quarterback, when you're winning, when you're playing well down the stretch, I mentioned it earlier, but Kentucky has not quit on Mark Stoops. And to me, that's important. I look at the rest of college football. LSU clearly quit on Brian Kelly. Florida State is in the process of quitting on Mike Norvell, and who knows, maybe we'll have to do an emergency show this evening because Mike Norvell, we don't know. Florida certainly quit on Billy Napier, but certainly has quit on this interim as well. I don't know if Auburn quit on Hugh Freeze or Hugh Freeze quit on Auburn, but somebody quit on somebody there at Auburn, okay? And I only bring it up because these guys are still playing hard for Mark Stoops. We might have doubted the message outside, I include myself, but inside that locker room, those guys are still bought in. So obviously, there's still 3 games left. We got to see what happens, right? You got to beat Tennessee Tech. That goes without saying. By the way, you want to put up another 40, 45 points, show that this offense is still humming, do that. Then I do think it largely comes down to what happens at Vandy, at Louisville. Vandy just picked up another big win on Saturday. Credit to them for beating Auburn. Vanderbilt now, 8-2, an unbelievable season for them. And I think realistically, it's fair to say that maybe you don't expect to go into that game expecting to win, but can it be close? Can it be competitive? Could you be the team that knocks Vanderbilt out of the college football playoff? And then the Louisville game speaks for itself. Louisville, of course, you don't need any motivation going into that game, but Louisville's another one. Right now they're 7-2. Final 2 games of the season are against SMU and Kentucky, and there's a chance Louisville's going to the ACC championship game and playing for a playoff berth. So you can't knock them out of the playoff the way that you potentially could with Vandy, but at the same time, you could ruin their season with another loss. So I don't want to put the cart before the horse with Kentucky, but listen, if I'm going to criticize Mark Stoops every loss since back in September, I got to go ahead and give him some credit. Back-to-back wins. And I think right now, if I was handicapping it, by the way, I put out a tweet on Saturday night. Still feels like people need to see what happens in the Vandy Louisville game before we make any final decisions on Mark Stoops. But I do think, to me, it is an interesting scenario.